Oh wow, this hasn't been picking up at all. Alright, so what's up guys, my name is Sig from FFXIV and things. I had thought about writing a how-to MMORPG article, but I put it off for a while because it would be super exhaustive. And since I just got back into Final Fantasy XIV, I thought it would be a lot more interesting to do a Let's Play and video and just kind of go over everything as we get there. Sorry about earlier, the microphone wasn't plugged in all the way, but we were, what I did was I was just talking about data centers as far as Final Fantasy is concerned. I don't know much about too many other MMOs. I played WoW, I played Silk Road, a lot of free to play MMOs, DCUO. They had those. WoW might, but I'm not sure. It's been a while since I played that. But anyways, the data center is pretty much the location, the physical, represents the physical location of a server for the game. So usually what you'll do is you'll go through and on Final Fantasy anyways, you'll pick a server that is closest to you. If you, like in North America or so. Now if you want to play with Japanese players, you can definitely play on the Japanese data centers. It will be, they're going to be located in Japan, so you're probably going to get some kind of, maybe some latency. But if you want to do that, you definitely can. And then the final one was Chaos, and that's the European data center. So if you have friends in Europe and you want to play with those guys and they play, you definitely can play over there too. Again, you might get a little bit of latency if you're in the U.S. And what we're doing is we're just if you're just getting into MMOs, you don't know too much about them, or and you're thinking about getting into them, or you've had friends who invited you to play MMOs, but you're kind of leery a little bit. What we're going to do is I'm going to try and go over everything I possibly can think of, so it might be a little exhaustive, and there might be some times where you might want to skip ahead and things like that on the video. In the live stream, you won't be able to do that, but on the video, definitely I'm going to upload it to YouTube, so you can go back and if you want to. The channel is FFXIV and things. So if you want to just, if this is something you're interested in, but you don't want to watch the whole live stream, you can definitely go there. We'll be done tonight for sure, and I'm probably going to segment it a little bit. So right now, we're just going to jump in. We're going to go right into character creation. We're just start at the very basics. Like I said, before the mic was plugged in, I'm going to do a video at some point, definitely or hopefully rather, on the installation and what you're installing and everything like that. I'll try and go a little bit over with the PC side too. But what you're installing and what all is involved in that, and if you're not sure about content delivery such as patches and expansions and hot fixes and things like that, well, I'm going to go over that and just kind of expound upon that a little bit, and just so you have an idea of what to expect when you go to log in and things like that. So let's just jump right in. This is Final Fantasy's character creation. Probably going to look very similar in a lot of other MMOs. So right now we've got a selection of 6 different races. We've got the Hure, Elezen, Lalafell, Makote, little cat people. We got the Rogadin. L2 is a little touchy. Let's switch back. And we have the Aura, which is actually a new race that they've just implemented not too long ago. So personally, I'm going to go with the Lalafell just because I like Lalafells. I do have a character made on the server I'm trying to get into. So if we can't get into that particular server, what I'll do is I'll jump into one that we can, so you can see the the process, the loading in process and the original cutscene and things like that, or the initial cutscene and everything. All right, so we're gonna go with Lala. We're gonna be a dude. And you can play as a girl, whatever. I did that too a couple times. It's fun, you know what I mean? But now I'm just, I'm happy being, just a little Lalafell dude. It's cool. Alright, so we're gonna go here. Alright, so as you can see, there's 2 sub races that I can pick from within the Lalafell, and it's the same for all of them. you get different clans, and we'll talk about what that is here. This is a good time to just kind of basically go over what stats are. In RPGs, generally speaking, you're going to be controlling a character or a group of characters, but in MMOs, you're going to typically be controlling a single character. I think there was one where you controlled multiple characters at a time, but in traditional MMOs, and that's what we're going to be going over, definitely traditional MMOs, you're going to be controlling a single character, and that character's proficiency in different activities and different strengths are going to be determined by their stats, the numerical value of their stats. So you can see I have two to choose from here. There's the Plains folks, and you can see down at the bottom under the description of the race and the clan, you'll see starting attributes or stats. So it's got strength at 18, and strength is going to be the main stat of anybody who would use strength. It's going to determine how proficient your character is at activities that involve strength, such as swinging a sword or blocking, taking damage, because the stronger you are, the more hits you can take, so forth, so on. And we'll go into what that applies to and so forth, and so what all these are going to apply to later on, as far as the game is concerned. The next one is dexterity at 22, and dexterity is going to determine how proficient you are in or at your agility. So how well you can dodge, how well you can aim, how fast you can run, things of that nature. And then the next stat we have is vitality. This isn't really going to affect your proficiency, but what it normally is going to affect is the amount of health that you have in the game. So how trying to think of a word, how much stamina we can say that your character would have. So how many hits they can take, and what all they can go through, and things like that. So the higher your vitality, the more durable you are. The next stat you see is going to be intelligence, or INT, and these are all very common shortenings of the stats or abbreviations. So we have intelligence. Intelligence is going to normally determine the potency of magic spells. Some games will use intelligence for magic and healing. This game actually uses intelligence strictly for magic, for magical attacks. And we'll go into the healing next is mind. Mind in this game, which you won't find in many other games, but mind in this game is going to affect the potency of your healing spells if you are a healer. So the higher your mind, or the higher your mind, the more potent your healing spells are going to be, the more they're going to heal for. And vice versa, the higher your intelligence, the more potent your magic attack spells will be, so the more damage they will do. And the last stat is something I haven't found in really any other MMO or RPG that I can think of, and it's piety. There are definitely stats that affect the same thing, but I haven't found this particular stat. And piety in this game is going to affect your magic pool. So it's your magic point pool, or your mana pool, however you want to say it. Basically, though, the higher your piety is, the more magic points you have, and each spell is going to cost a set amount of magic points. And so the higher that is, the higher value your magic pool or your magic points are, the more spells you can cast. And you can see that it's actually kind of separated very well, or sectioned off, or structured very well. So you have strength and dexterity, which are both physical attributes, and vitality, which affects your physical stamina. And then you have intelligence and mind, which are magical or mind attributes, and then piety, which affects that. Now, as far as Final Fantasy is concerned, the difference between the stat allocation is going to vary depending on what race you choose and what clan you choose under that race. It's going to vary very minutely And so generally speaking, you can really pick any race that you want, and it's not going to affect your gameplay at all. In Final Fantasy, unlike many other games, your single character or your first character can be any class in the game at any point in time. You can learn all the classes, you can learn all the gathering classes, you can learn all the crafting classes, you can do everything within the game you need to do on that one character, you want to do on that one character. So the starting stats aren't really going to play too much into it. Now, if there are people out there who would argue otherwise, and they're right, they're absolutely right. If you want to be the best, black mage or thaumaturge in the game, you know what I mean, the best that you can possibly be, you're going to want to go with the race and clan that has the highest starting intelligence, but it's probably only going to be 2 or 3 points. And unlike some other games, you actually have control over your stat allocation as you level. So as you fight monsters and do quests, you're going to be gaining experience, and at a certain point of experience gained, you'll actually increase in level or proficiency for your character, and it's denoted as a level. Each level that you get, you're going to get at 1 point, 1 attribute point or 1 stat point that you can allocate to whatever you want. So if you all those stat points into intelligence, and so at the end of the day, you're going to have the same amount of points to allocate that someone else will, than an Elysian will, which are going to have the highest intelligence, I believe. And so they're still only going to be at the end of the day 2 or 3 points off, which makes a difference definitely on numbers. But as far as being able to complete the game and be competitive, it's not really going to matter that much. You're still going to be able, if you choose the lowest intelligence to start off with, or the race and clan with the lowest intelligence to start off with, it's really not going to matter at the end of the day. You can still perform, and you're still going to be able to clear content just as well as anybody else. So it's really up to you what you want to do. Personally, don't care. I don't care. You know what I mean? I like Lalafell. They're cool. I'm going to be starting off as monk, which is a strength-based class. So their main stat that they're going to want to look at and worry about is going to be strength. And as you can see, their strength stat is not really that high. But I like the Lalafell, and I know that they can still do just fine. So that's what I'm going to go with. But if you do want to, what they call min-max, which is like getting down into the nitty-gritty and making sure that all your numbers are the best that they can possibly be, you're definitely going to want to look into that. And there are tons of resources out there on Reddit, just any site, forums, podcasts for sure. You can definitely do that, and you'll find plenty of help and plenty of people who think the same way. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to go with the Plainsfolk here. For me, Lalafell are very small people, as you can see. So I like to make my Lalafell the tallest of Lalafell, because that's cool with me. And I pretty much have an idea of what I want him to look like already. But as you can see, we can choose how tall he is, his height. We can choose his skin color, and we're going to go with a little bit, a little darker, a little tan jobby here. Let's see what we got. And as you can see, I can actually switch through different settings with different lighting, so I can what he actually looks like and what the colors are actually going to reflect. Let's make this guy a little darker. Imagine he lives in a desert. So I'm going to actually model him after the character that I'm going to switch over to once we catch up. But as you can see, there's plenty of hairstyles to choose from here. And as with most, they're usually going to be good. I will say that Final Fantasy has the best quality character creation for an MMO that I've seen, just because the hairstyles are actually really. It looks like there was a lot of thought. They look realistic, and they look really well done. But we're gonna go with this one in the end. Let's just see what else they've got here. Oh, long locks there. Let's see what we got. Alright. A little ponytail. A little cut there. A little hero cut looking thing. just a regular old, good old boy. Alright, so we're gonna go with this one here. I'm gonna go with black hair, but you can do any color. And then again, typically with MMOs, they're gonna let you do whatever you want. You want pink hair? Go ahead, dude. Get some pink hair. You want green hair? You go ahead, you get some green hair. And there's usually a decent amount. But like I said, again, this is probably the best customer characterization I've been through, the most well thought out. That gave me the ability to really do what I wanted to do. And again, here you can choose highlights if you want to. So if you want to put some highlights in there, you definitely can. But we're not gonna. We're just gonna keep it simple, keep it black. And now we're gonna get to be able to choose his face. I mean, as you can see, I can zoom in, zoom out to get a better idea of where he is or what he looks like in different aspects. So there's the first face, second face, third face, and fourth face. And we're just gonna go with this one because that's the character, that's Sig. And all this is not gonna, again, this stuff here is not gonna affect gameplay at all. This is just a representation of what you want to look like in the game, how you want to appear, how you want people to recognize you. Because again, you gotta remember, this is it. You know what I mean? This is all people are gonna see. This is gonna be your representation of you. So people are gonna see your character and they're gonna go, hey, I know that guy. You know what I mean? And of course, if you're not worried about that, because you definitely going to be chatting with tons of people, they're going to get to know you, your personality and things like that. You can just choose whatever you want. What are we doing? This is jaw. Alright, I'm going to go with the first one, eye shape. And I've done this quite a few times, so I'm probably going to be going a little fast. The big eyes, iris size, really large. Now color here, I'm gonna go blue. Like the bluest blue I can go. That's about it there. Now here again, we have another sub option, which you'll want to watch out for these, because I didn't even know you could do this until I saw somebody who had done this. You can actually select color for his opposite eye. Which I think is super cool. We're gonna go green with Sig here. So that looks about right. And confirm. Now we're gonna get to choose his eyebrows, and you can see how a little bit of this actually really changes. Just the smallest changes can actually change the whole entire face. And this is something that I enjoy doing for sure. But if you don't enjoy this for sure, and you're watching the video, just go ahead and skip maybe a minute and a half or maybe a minute. But if not, definitely you can. I'm doing a little bit of sculpting here. And go with that. It looks a little more mature. Mouth. Nope. Yep. Looks like it's the first mouth. Alright, and lip color is none. That's fine. They do a little bit of everything for everybody. Ear shape, we've got to the side pointy, we got up round, and up kind of pointy-ish. We're going to go with these guys here. Alright, ear size we're actually just going to keep the same, but it's at 25. Alright, you can see, you can just kind of zoom. So actually we're going to make it a little bit, we'll make them a little smaller. Put them at 16. Alright, so now we can choose facial features. Do we want him to have a mustache? Some sideburns? So we can have an earring. Earring over here. We could do both earrings. And I'm not sure what the black nose thing is, but it's there. Alright, and then we have tattoos. So we can have these tattoos here, which that one will be covered up by the hair, but that's okay. And then if we did choose a tattoo, we can go through and choose the tattoo color. And this is all pretty, play around with it, see what you like, Don't be afraid to just try some wild, crazy things. Like put a face paint on it. Which I'm going to do here, and we'll actually reverse it and keep it there. don't be afraid to play around with it. Have a little bit of fun. Let me see here. I can choose any kind of color. So there's really personalizing your character can really connect you to that character, which will only enhance your experience with the game, for sure. So I'm gonna go with white. Now these are all the voices. And of course, we can go from angry. We can go from angry to sad, or to excited, happy, yes. I'm gonna go with number 9. It sounds mature, but not, super deep. That's a little raspy. That's good. Sounds like a normal voice, and it's all going to be a personal preference. And everybody's going to respect what you choose. And I actually haven't run into anybody who said anything about anything. All right, so we're going to save this appearance data. No. All right, so here we're going to run into something that Final Fantasy does, and that other MMOs might do. This is where you'll get to choose kind of a little bit of a background of your character. And for here, it's hard because there's really no association with it. So you have first astral moon. This is his date of birth. So these are technically like your months. I'm going to go with the 5th Umbral Moon just because, and we're going to go with the 15th because why not? So there is a way to check in the game, I'm sure, what day it is and what month it is. I don't know what it is, but I know that there is a way. So if you want to keep track of that, you definitely can, especially if you want to get into roleplay, a little more heavy roleplay, which you can do. And there are a lot of people out there who do that. There are actually servers. If you are into roleplay, what I would do is get on the Reddit forums or do a quick Google search for which Final Fantasy, if you're looking to play Final Fantasy or any MMO really, go ahead and just do a Google search and see which, usually it's by server. Everybody who likes to roleplay, a lot of people like to roleplay, will congregate on one server. And just do a quick Google search and, X game best roleplay server. And then, and generally you'll find that pretty easily. So now we get to select our deity, which I have no idea what this actually does. It says something about elemental attributes, which could be your defenses, but I'm not sure. I like the wave person. Yeah, navigation. Yeah. So we're going to go with that one, but you have quite a few to choose from. Let's see, so 12. Oh, yeah. Okay, so there are 12. Okay. I'm going to select that. All right, so now we're going to actually get to choose what combat class we're going to start out as. What Final Fantasy does is they break it into 2 different subsections. So you have Disciplines of War, and then you have Disciplines of Magic. So if you want to start out as a magic user, you definitely can. There's Conjurer, who's the initial healer, and actually the only class that starts off healing. Arcanist, what Final Fantasy does is you start off with a base class, or base class, and then once you hit level 30, you'll actually move forward from your base class, and you'll gain a new class, which they call jobs. Arcanist starts off as a DPS, and we'll go into what all that is here in a second. But once they move on, once they hit their job class, they have a choice, and you don't have to choose. You can do both if you want to, but you can actually choose. There's a healing in it to further, and then the other choice is to further your DPS. Well, actually, let's talk about it now. So this is the perfect time really to talk about roles. There are typically 3, or in Final Fantasy there are 3 main roles. Sometimes in other MMOs there will be 4, and we'll talk about the 4th last. But typically there are going to be 3 main roles that you can play as a character in combat. And the first one is going to be the tank, and it's the first one on the list here is actually Gladiator for Final Fantasy, which is a tank. Your role as a tank is going to be to gather up, and when you're in a party in any case, or when you're playing with other players, is to gather up the enemies and keep their focus on you. In Final Fantasy XIV is to generate enmity, more enmity than other players. Other MMOs call it different, threat, aggro, different things like that. Generally, threat is a general term, but we're just going to use enmity here, just because it's a lot easier and it will help connect with the game. That's going to be your job. Your job is to hold all the enemies, keep their attention on you, so that they're not running off and attacking your friends. Later on, I will say that personally, tanking is probably the most stressful job, and it's not because tanking is difficult to do. It actually isn't. It's actually usually fairly simple. You're going to be attacking different enemies, and you're going to be making sure to use your defensive abilities that you will gain as you level to make sure that you mitigate his damage when needed, or decrease the amount of damage when needed. So you'll have abilities that will say will decrease the amount of damage you take for 20 seconds by 20%. And so there are going to be specific times later on where you're going to want to use those type things. But generally speaking, that's what you're going to be doing. You're just going to be gathering up all the enemies. You're going to be keeping their attention on you, and you're going to be watching and seeing if you can use a defensive ability to kind of help keep yourself alive. But it is stressful because generally, especially later on, if you die as a tank, and let's say you're the only tank, or maybe even sometimes if you are not, if you die as the tank, the mob, or we call them mobs, but the enemy that you were holding is now loose to go after the person who's causing the next threat, which is generally either the healer if they're healing a lot, or the damage dealers, the DPS, if they're doing a lot of damage. And we'll go into that a little bit more later. So don't worry about that too much. But other classes are not going to be able to take as much damage as well as you will be able to. Not nearly as well. To the point where if you die and then the enemy turns around and is queued up to do a certain move, he may just take somebody out in one shot. And so usually what's going to happen is if the tank dies, people are going to try and scramble and keep things alive, but usually it means that everybody else is going to die too. So there is a lot of pressure. While it's not difficult to be a tank, and it's not difficult to do the job very often, it's not too difficult. It is very easy to mess up and mess up bad. It's, at least in Final Fantasy for sure, there are times where it's really easy. If you're not on your P's and Q's and you didn't pop your defensive ability, that next hit's going to take you out, and you know it was coming. You know what I mean? And then the whole party dies, and you guys have to start all over again. So there's a lot of pressure on the tank to be a decent or good tank, so it can be a lot of pressure. Now, if you thrive under pressure and you love, especially being the center of attention, or you love, you love being right in the thick of everything, tank is the way to go. It's a lot of fun, especially in Final Fantasy. They really make it accessible, and they add a little bit of nuance, so it's not the same, and it doesn't get too boring. You know what I mean? But it's also not too strenuous, not too difficult. But tank is definitely the way to go. Gladiator is your initial tank. They use a sword and a shield. They have great damage mitigation. They typically don't do too much damage, and they originally had a difficult time holding threat, especially early on. But they've since changed that. I still don't think that they do very much damage, but they can hold threat no problem, even on multiple targets. The other tank is going to be the Marauder. That's the starting tank, and Marauder uses an axe. Typically they have a larger health pool than Gladiators will, so they have a little bit more buffer, but they have fewer defensive abilities, and they also take a little bit more damage. So if you like being a little chaotic, you know what I mean, not knowing what's going to happen, you know, if something's on, you know, something's not ready to be, a defensive ability isn't ready to be used yet, how are you going to make it? Is the healer going to be able to keep up? Then Marauder is for you, and Marauder actually does do a decent amount of damage as far as damage dealing goes across the board. The other tank, which you can't access from the beginning, is going to be Dark Knight, and it just got added in with the expansion. Once you hit 50 on any class, you will be able to go back and start off as Dark Knight, but you will start at level 30, I do believe. So you will have to re-level a little bit. Max level is now 60, was 50. So you'll have 30 levels to go to hit max level. But, you know, Dark Knight, from what I've seen, is actually pretty cool. I haven't played it. I kind of want to, just to feel what it's like, just to see what it's like to play Dark Knight, because the nuances of different tanks and different classes of tanks is always very interesting. So that would be your third one. But that's really about it for tanking. Like I said, you're gonna be the leader. You're gonna set the pace, and you're gonna want to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's. And again, for all these classes, anything that I mention here, you're gonna be able to find resources online where you're gonna be able to read through and hear other people's opinions and other people's experiences and other people's advice. And so that's always going to be beneficial if you're ever confused. And you can email me. It's ffxivandthings@gmail.com, and I'll try and get back to you, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, for sure. You know what I mean? You can check out the site, which is ffxivandthings.wordpress.com, and I do a little bit of everything for reviews for other games, but I'm really going to start focusing on Final Fantasy here. And you can put a comment up on anything on there, anything you want to do, ask questions, anything like that, and I'll definitely get back to you. All right, so next is going to be, we'll talk about DPS classes, which are the next class. The first one they have here is going to be Pugilist, which is a melee combat fist martial artist, pretty much a monk. So they're going to use their fists. It's going to be a lot of. They're going to use their fists. So DPS stands for. We'll talk about what that is. DPS stands for damage per second. Your job as a DPS is to do as much damage as you can, as fast as you can, as efficiently as you can, and that's going to be your main focus. I would say that DPS is probably, as far as mechanically, is probably going to be. I would say as far as your responsibility, to a degree. There are other things we'll talk about here in a second, but as far as your responsibilities tend to be fairly low, as far as what you have to do. And if you go down, usually you can get res. It's not really going to hurt the raid. It's not really going to hurt the group. Because you can be rezzed, and you still have your tank who's holding the enemies, you still have the healer who's healing, and you still have the other DPS who's DPSing. So they can res you up, they can bring you back real quick, and you can get back into the fight. So your responsibilities are as far as in the beginning, for sure, the first parts of the game and such, early on, are going to be pretty low. Your main focus for being a DPS is to know your class, and to know when to use your abilities and what order to use your abilities, and what order to use your abilities in certain circumstances as well. And that's kind of a good time to talk about rotations, what they call rotations, or the sequence in which you use your abilities. Tanks kind of have a rotation to a degree, but it's usually very basic. Healers have no rotation at all that I know of, but DPS definitely are generally going to have a rotation all the time, and that's, like I said, it's just going to be the cycle in which you use the sequence in which you use your abilities. We'll go over a basic one real quick. archers, which are down here. Archers are also a DPS class. They're a ranged DPS class, and they're dexterity based. And we'll go back, we'll kind of flip-flop back, we'll backtrack a little bit real quick. It's not going to take long. Real quick about main stats and stat base and things like that. But an archer's, your starting off rotation is going to, you'll start off with the ability called Heavy Shot, and Heavy Shot just purely does damage. Your neck just purely does damage. So that's just something that you can just use anytime, really. You know what I mean? That's going to be, if you're not doing something else, go ahead and hit Heavy Shot. You know what I mean? It's shot. The next ability you get though is called Straight Shot. Straight Shot, Heavy Shot has a potency of 150, which the potency in Final Fantasy as far as going to determine how much damage the attack actually does, or how much damage the attack is going to do, and it scales. But how much damage the attack is going to do, what the potency of the attack is. And so, of course, the higher the number, the more damage potential that attack has. So, but Straight Shot has a potency of 140. And I know what you're thinking, like, why would they give me an ability later on, like, that's not as potent as the first ability that I got? Well, let's see what Straight Shot does is it actually gives you your character, when you use it, it gives your character a beneficial effect, which we'll call a buff, and we'll call those buffs from now on. But it's pretty much a beneficial effect to your character. It's a beneficial attribute, and what Straight Shot does is for the next 20 seconds, you have a 10% higher chance of causing a critical hit. And critical hits are just basically, you always have a chance for critical hits, but what a critical hit is you have a chance to do a hit with any ability that does extra damage. A critical hit is just basically denoting that you've done an attack with extra damage. In Final Fantasy XIV, you'll see the numbers will be bigger, and they'll have an exclamation point at the end, like, hey, you just got a crit. You know what I mean? And pretty much what that means is that you did really well on that. Whatever ability you just used, you used it super well, right? So even though Straight Shot has a lower potency, a lower damage potential, it still has this added effect that lasts for 20 seconds. So typically what you would want to do is you're going to want to go ahead and start off with Straight Shot just to get that 10% buff, so that your damage potential, your overall damage potential is higher, because you have a 10% higher chance of doing a critical hit. And then after that, you're going to want to use Heavy Shot, because Heavy Shot has a higher damage potential on its own. It has higher potency. And then, so you'll use that until the 20 seconds is over, and Straight Shot, the buff for Straight Shot wears off, the beneficial effect of Straight Shot wears off, and then you'll do what we call refreshing, and you'll use Straight Shot again to refresh that buff, and you're pretty much going to be trying to keep that buff up all the time. You want that buff to be up all the time. The next ability that you'll get as an archer is going to be Venom Shot. And what Venom Shot does, I don't know the potency offhand, but I think it's pretty low. It's probably like an 80 or a 60 or something like that. It's definitely not something you want to use to do damage. But what it does do is it applies a damage over time effect, or a dot as we call it. But we'll call them damage over time for now because it makes more sense. So what Venom Shot does is it applies a damage over time. It pretty much poisons the target, we'll say, but it's a damage over time. So for the next, I don't remember the tooltip, but we'll just say for the next 15 seconds, every second, the enemy you hit with Venom Shot will take a potency of we'll say 100 damage for every second. That enemy is going to take 100 potency worth of damage. So that's definitely a benefit, because while that's ticking, you can still be doing Heavy Shot. So once you get that ability, now your rotation has changed. The sequence in which you want to use those abilities has changed. So you'll want to start off with Straight Shot, so you can get that 10% critical buff. and then you'll want to use Venom Shot so you can be doing that damage over time. And after that's done, you'll want to switch back to your damage dealing ability, which is Heavy Shot. So you'll just use Heavy Shot until Venom Shot wears off. And then you'll refresh Venom Shot so you can keep that, you can keep it up, you can keep that damage going. And then when Straight Shot falls off, you'll want to use Straight Shot again to keep that crit chance up. And that's the basics of what a rotation is. Now you may be wondering, why do I have to do all that, right? Well, the thing is that you want to be doing the most damage that you can at all times, the best amount of damage. The more damage you do, and the faster you do it, and the more efficiently you do it, the faster you're going to get through content, the faster you're going to get through enemies. So in a dungeon, the more damage you do, the faster you do it, and the more efficiently you do it, the faster you're going to get through the dungeon. But the slower you do it, and the less efficiently you do it, the slower you're going to go through the dungeon. So it's more for in the beginning, in the early stage of the game, it's more for the other players, more so is taking them into consideration. You definitely want to do the best that you can so that everybody can get through the content at a decent pace, and you can get the items that you need, and you can get the experience that you need. Later on in the game, there are going to be times where you're going to have to be able to push out as much damage as you possibly can. A lot of the encounters are going to have what's called a DPS check. And what that means is that there is an encounter where the enemy is going to do a certain move if they are not taken down to a certain percentage of their life within a certain amount of time. And so if your group doesn't get to that percentage within that certain amount of time, they're typically, I would say, always the enemy is going to use that ability, and they're going to wipe the raid, and you're going to have to start all over again. So again, that rotation is going to come into play there. You're going to want to be doing the optimal amount of damage that you can do, so that you can definitely help clear that content for your friends and for the other players that you may be playing with. Early on, it's going to be very simple, but you're always going to want to read your tooltips. Anytime you get an ability, a new ability, you're going to want to use your mouse or your cursor to hover over it and read your tooltip. Read the tooltip for the ability, see what it does. Now, of course, there are resources online. If you don't want to do that, you can just go to the resources online, and you'll find people who have theory crafted the mess out of what is the best rotation for any given class. And you can definitely just pick that up and go. And as you go, if you want to do that, as you go, you may find, hey, this doesn't exactly work for me. Excuse me. Or I think this may work better this other way. And you can kind of modify it yourself. But generally, that's the one thing about MMOs in general. They're going to teach you how to use the systems that are in place very well. There's going to be tutorials and pop-ups and all different kinds of things that are going to tell you everything you need to know about how to access your friends list, and how to join a dungeon, and how to do all these things. They're definitely going to do that for you, but what they're not going to do is they're not going to teach you how to play your class effectively and as efficiently as you possibly can. They're really going to leave that up to you. Now they do, of course, add hints in there as to when to use what things and when things are designed to use, such as Heavy Shot having a higher potency than Straight Shot, so that you can see, hey, the Heavy Shot has a higher potency than Straight Shot, so maybe I don't want to use Straight Shot all the time. Maybe I need to be using Heavy Shot more. You know what I mean? And Straight Shot has this buff that lasts so long. It has this beneficial effect that lasts so long. So I probably want to keep that up. So maybe I'll just use Straight Shot, and then use Heavy Shot afterwards. So I'm doing the most damage. So I'm doing more damage. And then when Straight Shot falls off, boom, I got it. You know what I mean? They're all in there. You just have to learn how to read that. They want you to know, though. They want you to know, and they're going to provide you the ways to do it, but they're going to want you to figure it out. And that's a lot of what MMOs are about, is figuring that out, figuring out how to play the game. And that's why it can be a lot of fun, because it almost never ends. There's always going to be something new to learn. to one degree or another. If you want to progress, further in your character, and you can do the cookie cutter thing if you want. What we call cookie cutter is like what I said, is pulling someone else's rotation, pulling someone's advised rotation off and using it yourself. You can do that and you'll be fine, and you'll be able to clear content and everything like that. But if you really want to press it, you really want to kind of personalize it a little bit, you know what I mean? You definitely want to try and feel it out and figure out how the game works. Anyways, we'll get back to what we're talking about. So DPS class, that's what that is, and that's going to be your main focus. Your main focus is to do as much damage as you can do, as fast as you can do it, as efficiently as you can do it. Again, later on, later in the game, there are going to be times where you're going to have to do different things. Where you're going to want to learn mechanics of fights and things of that nature, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The third role is going to be a healer, and that's what that is. And that's exactly what it sounds like. You're going to be, as a healer, you're going to be in charge of keeping your friends alive, keeping the tank alive, keeping your DPS alive, your friends who are DPSing alive. That's what you're going to be doing, and you're going to be. That's pretty much it. You're going to be managing your MP, your mana pool, or your mana points, which is going to be very important. So you're going to want to watch how many spells you're casting, and how much mana you're using. Each class is going to have, each healing class will have one or two abilities that allow them to rebuild their mana pool, but they're only going to be able to use so often. So it's going to be definitely this kind of balance between healing and watching your mana pool, and then okay, now it's time to use this, and now that I've used that, I can go back to healing. Healing is probably I wouldn't say the easiest, but it's definitely can be the least stressful, can be the least stressful. But again, if the healer goes down, typically that's going to put a lot of strain on the party. So there's a lot of group responsibility as far as healing is concerned. You also are going to want to be good at micromanaging, because you're going to be watching bars on the left side, or if you can get macros and things like that, like mouse over macros. Macros are pretty much commands that you can input that create a single button for you. So an example would be a mouse over macro. What it does is, that's kind of a little too far. Let's say you want to make a button that you can click or press, so you don't have to type it out, that makes your character wave and say hello and then jump in the air. You can create a button that would say, use the command to wave, and then use the command to say hello, and then use the command to jump in the air. And you can take that button and put it on your hotbar, and that will allow you to press that button, and it will your character will automatically do, the game will automatically do all those things for you. There are mouse over macros, like what I was saying. That's a little more advanced, and what that would do is allow you, instead of having, typically as a healer, you would be scrolling through the party list of the group list, the list of the group of players, and you'd be scrolling through and selecting the one that you want, and then casting your spell on that. What a mouse over macro does is it actually allows you to move your mouse whatever character your mouse is just over. It will allow you to cast a spell on that character. So you don't have to scroll through. You can just use your mouse and hover over somebody and hit your button that's assigned to your heal, and then keep doing that if you want to. But you are definitely going to have to micromanage. You're going to have to be watching health bars. You're going to have to be you're going to want to pre-heal, things like that, which we'll talk about when we get to the healing aspect. I'm going to go through, and since we can beat every class on one character, I'm definitely going to grab a tank class. I'm definitely going to grab a healing class, and I'm definitely going to have a DPS class. So we're going to go through, and we're going to kind of go take each one, at least 1 to 50, so that we can kind of talk about that process and things like that. But so that's the only thing about Conjurer. But if you like being able to survey the battlefield. You like being able to kind of hang back a little bit, and you like micromanaging, especially. You know what I mean? Healing definitely is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But all of these things, there's always going to be one responsibility that all these classes share, and that's knowing the mechanics of whatever it is that you're doing, or knowing how the fight progresses. Early on, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Mechanics, when we talk about that, is going to be an example of that would be you're fighting an enemy, and the enemy begins casting a spell or using an ability, and they will, we'll say they're using an area of effect ability, which is an ability that affects an area. Most abilities are actually targeted onto a single character. So your basic attacks and things like that are going to be targeted onto a single character. What an AoE does is it targets a specific area and affects that area, whatever that target radius is. It's going to affect that area. There are multiple types. There are circles and cones and lines. We won't worry about that because it's pretty self-explanatory. You'll see it. But typically what they're going to do is, let's say this enemy decides to cast an AoE ability on the tank. What's that going to look like and represented like in Final Fantasy is typically it's going to be an orange circle on the ground, and you'll see if you're targeted onto the enemy, you'll typically see a cast bar above their head, and once that cast bar completes, that ability will launch. Now, if you're outside of that circle when that ability launches, you won't take any damage from it. But if you're still inside that circle, you're going to take however much damage that ability deals. So as soon as you see that orange circle, you're going to want to get out, and that's a mechanic. That's one mechanic. And so knowing those things, what to move out of, when to move, and things like that are something that all these classes are going to have to. It doesn't matter what role you play, you're going to have to know that it's definitely going to be a responsibility. And sometimes different roles will have more responsibility with mechanics than others, and that may change through a fight as well. And that's going to be something you're not going to have to worry about until things start getting more serious, until you start getting further along in the into the game. But it's going to come down to the point where remember how we talked about rotations for your character. Bosses and enemies are important enemies are going to have rotations, and those rotations are going to have rotations. So they're going to do specific abilities in specific orders, and everybody's going to want to know what those abilities are and what they need to do when those abilities are going to be used, even if they don't need to do anything. And then those rotations sometimes are going to be broken down into phases. So let's say you have an enemy who has a set rotation until you. He may only use that rotation until you get him down to 80% of his health, and then he'll move to a totally new rotation, and then you may get him down to 55%, and he may switch to a totally different rotation than the first two, or he may have stuff from the first one and the second one thrown into the third one with some new stuff. So it can get a little hairy, but it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun learning these rotations, especially when you're with a good group of players. That's another thing. This is a massively multiplayer game. There are going to be thousands of people playing on your server, whatever server you choose. So if you're joining up with friends, definitely stay with them. But if you're not, you're going to want to try, and you don't have to. There is one character that I know in particular, or one player I know in particular who never joined a guild. They just use what Final Fantasy calls link shells, which is basically like a chat group, and would use what Final Fantasy has as a party finder to complete content. But it's not a bad idea. Even then, she was still finding people who she could align with, who did things the way that she did, and who thought about things the way that she did. You want to find people that you group well with, and people that you align with. And that's going to make this a lot more fun, because when you get into content with people who may be a little too serious for you, and let's say you mess up, they might take that a little seriously, and there are people out there who are like that, who want, they want to be the best of the best, and they want to do the things as most effectively as they can. And if you're not on that same page, if you're not on the same level, they won't be able to get with you. You know what I mean? And you're gonna have to go, you're gonna have to go find another group, which is fine. There are people who do that, but you're gonna find people who aren't. You're gonna find people who are just relatively casual, but a little more serious. They do want to clear content, but they're not worried about how fast it goes or when. They're just more worried about having fun. And they're going to find people who are totally casual and don't care about clearing content at all. So there's a little bit of everything for everybody. But back to mechanics. Again, shifting back, we're going to go back to mechanics here. That's something everybody's going to want to know, and there are definitely going to be mechanics specifically for each role, sometimes specifically for tanks, sometimes specifically for DPS, sometimes specifically for healers, and there's going to be ones that affect them all, and there's going to be ones that affect everybody but the tank, and those are more common. But typically DPS are usually going to end up handling a lot of mechanics, and healers can definitely end up handling a lot of the mechanics as well. Let's, for instance, remember how we talked about AoE spells? Well, there are going to be, let's say there's an enemy who uses an AoE spell, but that AoE spell, we'll say, deals a set amount of damage. We're going to say 10,000 damage, right? A typical health pool at this point, we're going to say, or how much HP a character has, is going to be about 2,000, right? So you're going to want at least 5 people. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. 2,000, right? So, but this AoE is going to be targeted onto a player. So instead of a circle, you're going to see, usually in Final Fantasy at least, it will be a mark over a person's head, like a crystal or a diamond or something like that, and that'll denote that this is an area of effect attack that has a different attribute to it. So what this one will do, and they use this frequently, but this is just an example. What this will do is it's going to deal that 10,000 damage, but instead of dealing that 10,000 damage to the targeted player and anybody else, dealing 10,000 damage individually to the targeted player and anybody else who's in the area of effect, what it does is it's going to break that damage up and split it up based on how many people are in the area of effect. So what that means is if you have 5 people in that area of effect, it's going to deal 2,000 damage to those people. So we'll give those people 3,000. All right, just so they survive, so that we make sure that they make it, right? 3,000 health. And so you're going to want at least 5 people in there so that the damage gets split evenly and everybody survives. That one player survives, and everybody everybody in that area of effect survives as well. If you want to put more people in there, you definitely can. But that's something that you're going to have to know. You're going to have to know the difference between the puddles on the ground, or the indicators on the ground, and the indicators above people's head. And each indicator is going to be different. And you're going to want to know, what those are, so that you know what to do to continue to help progress your group through the content. And then healers are going to want to know what that mark is, so they know that, okay, these people are about to group up and they're about to get hit hard. I'm going to have to heal them really seriously, real quick, and then get back on healing the tank. Because typically tanks are going to be taking a lot of damage. And these are all things that you're going to have to know. So that's always going to be a responsibility that you are going to encounter in an MMO, in an MMORPG. Typically you're going to encounter having to know mechanics and having to know what to do based on what your role is. But as far as what your role is specifically, those you can kind of choose a little bit. So that's that. We're going to just stop there because that was pretty lengthy. We're going to go ahead and we're going to choose. I'm going to start off as a pugilist for the DPS class. Now, I thought about starting off as an archer because their beginning rotation is a lot simpler. Both pugilists and lancers have what we call positional attacks. So not only do they have a rotation, a specific order in which they need to use their attacks, some of those attacks have specific positions in which they need to be on the enemy in order to do the most amount of damage that they can do. So, for instance, Pugilist has an ability called Snap Punch, and Snap Punch does X amount of potency, but if you are on the flank of the enemy, it'll do X more amount. So with Pugilist, you're going to be doing a little bit of dancing here and there. Lancer, you're going to be doing a little bit of dancing here and there around the enemy, from the rear to the flank to the rear to the flank, just so that you can do the most amount of damage that you can. Archers don't have positionals. There are actually 4 other classes that aren't on this list. One we've already talked about, which was Dark Knight, which is a tank. There's another DPS. There's 2 other DPS classes. There's Ninja, which is fairly similar to Monk. It's very fast-paced. I think they took the positionals off their abilities, so you don't have to worry about that. And I'm not sure when you can. Probably level 15 or so, you should be able to pick up Ninja. So if that's something that you want to do, just go ahead and pick something you think you might want to play later on. Level that to 15, and we'll actually go into, once we hit 15, I'll run through and I'll show you where everything is, and all the other classes are. I think it's 15, it may be 10. Anyways, there's Ninja, which is a DPS class. There's Machinist, which is also a DPS class. Machinist uses a gun. They're range-based DPS. So Archer is a range-based DPS, and Machinists are a range-based DPS. And then there's Astrologian, which is a healing class. Now, Astrologian, Machinist, and Dark Knight are classes you can only get once you hit level 50 and you get into the expansion content. And we'll talk about that here in a sec. Well, we can talk about that now. Pretty much Final Fantasy just had its first expansion. So all the content that we're going to be going through now up until we hit level 50 is all going to be the original game. An expansion is just added on content. Usually it's a lot of content. It's usually almost a whole other game within itself. Well, I can't say that. It's not usually that much. It's usually, but it's definitely a good portion. It's noticeable, and you'll definitely see how much extra content they added with an expansion. It's considerable. So you won't be able to get to those classes until you hit level 50, which gives you access to, at level 50, you'll get access to the expansion content if you have the expansion, and then you can choose those classes and start from level 30 and re-level again. But it's really up to you, for sure. So those 3 classes you can't. Ninja, I think you can at level 10. I can't remember if it's 10 or 15 where you can actually start learning other classes. But that's pretty much it. There was something I was thinking about talking about, but I can't remember what it was. I'm sure we'll think about it later. Again, if you have any questions, you can definitely comment on the YouTube channel, and I'll be watching that. And you can check the site, which I'm going to load the video onto the site, so you can comment there if you want, and you can email me, which I'll probably put that on the YouTube channel somewhere, so you should be able to find that pretty easily. And if you have any requests, definitely go ahead and send them out. I'm going to be trying to do everything I possibly can. And then we're going to be doing other games too. I'm not just going to be doing Final Fantasy. I actually put together a video recently that I just uploaded today for Samurai Warriors 4 that I had a lot of fun editing and getting the footage for, and picking the music and everything like that. So I definitely still want to do that kind of stuff too. So if you have any requests or anything like that, if you want to play, you know what I mean, just let me know. You know what I mean. Yeah, and I'll definitely do that for sure. I'll definitely want to do that. So we're gonna start off as Pugilist, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna confirm this, and I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette because I've seen this cutscene a million times. But it's super cool. That is one thing I will say about Final Fantasy that's definitely different from other MMOs, is that Final Fantasy in general is a story-focused RPG, and it's really no different here as an MMORPG. There's going to be a lot of cutscenes, there's going to be a lot of reading if you want to. You don't have to, you can skip it all if you want to, but it's all pretty good quality. It gets a little campy sometimes, but it actually adds to the charm of the game and of the story. So if you're a story-driven or a story-focused person, story-focused gamer, this definitely is not bad, especially if you like MMOs. This has a good decent story, good character development, things of that nature. And even some of the side quests are cool too. So I'm gonna hit confirm here, and we're gonna try and start on Sergeant Tannis. We can give him a name. And the other character I have already has the name currently that I want to use. So we're just going to give him a name, the other name that I used before. Okay, and confirm. And we're loading in, and I will be right back.
Here. Here. Feel. Hear, feel, think.